So I've actually done it. I have finally, after 3 long years, qualified as a primary teacher. It's done. It feels really weird. It doesn't seem believable in my head that I'm now just allowed to teach. But it's done. I've made it through, so I thought it is the perfect time to share my experience and my top tips now I've graduated. So I've made a little bit of a list, but it's me, so we're gonna go off course. I'm gonna try and condense this as best I can. I'm probably gonna end up cutting loads out, so bear with me. So I thought this video could be like a top tips, and then I'll make another video of like the negatives, the positives and stuff like that, because it's a 3-year course, there's a lot to get through. So this is just going to be my top tips for being a student teacher. So just to clarify, my course was primary education with QTS. That was my degree. Obviously you can do different routes, like doing a degree of your choice and then doing a PGC after, but a lot of these tips are going to be focused on placement rather than university work, just because I feel like that is the bit that people struggle with most. If you do have any questions about university work, I'll make a whole video about that as well if that's of any interest. But I do feel like the placement part of it is the thing that defines the course, that like separates it from any other course, if you get me. So just an outline if you are thinking of doing the course but you're not sure how it all happens. From my experience, my first year, it was during COVID, so my first year was all assignment, and as long as you passed, that was all that mattered. We were meant to have 1 week of like observing, but that couldn't happen because it just wasn't safe because of COVID, so that was put on to the first week of our second year placement, and that placement was about 12 weeks long, I want to say. I think it was 60 days, so half of your entire placement. So when you're becoming a teacher, every single teacher has to do 120 days of school experience. In our course we done 60 and 60 in year 2 and 60 in year 3, and basically it gets progressively harder as you go along the weeks, obviously. So I would say your second year placement is where it really starts to kick in. You've gone from like assignments that don't really matter in year 1, as long as you pass, that's all that matters, to, and you know, you can go on nights out, just chill. It's really not that hard going, especially because of COVID. We were barely even in uni, so it was literally just pajamas all day every day. You go from that to a full-time job where you actually have to be like professional, and it does take you by surprise. And I think that would actually be my first tip, is to sort of prepare yourself for that. I mean, it's quite obvious, but I didn't have all the clothes, or I don't know, all the stuff, like the supplies that I needed. So I think preparing yourself for that first placement is really necessary. Go out if you can, buy some new clothes that are more professional, because I went from like going out crop tops and jeans to like long dresses and tights. But from my experience, is weird because obviously you're in different schools, but from my experience, year 2 placement is a lot more easygoing than year 3. I'll go into that a bit more in detail in a sec. My first tip here for going into placement is be confident and show it. Even if you're not confident, kind of show it. Obviously don't be like overwhelmingly confident about things you're clearly not confident about, and ask questions if you have them. Of course, that is like the tip, is ask questions if you have them, and don't be afraid to ask them. Also, if you know what you're doing, don't play it off as you don't. And that might be quite a unique one, but I am the sort of person who, even if they know they taught a good lesson, would be like, oh, was it good? Was it? Was it? I would rather show I have no confidence, because I think it's easier then if you get something wrong, it's not as embarrassing. But you've got to have a mixture. Don't be like overconfident about things you clearly don't know about, and be happy to ask questions. But as well, there's a really fine line, because I do find that on placement, if you act like a massive lack of confidence, it'll show in your teaching, but as well, sometimes it can be taken advantage of. I would say, like, if you show you're not confident, then your mentor, who is literally marking you on your teaching ability, is going to be like, well, they're not confident, and it can affect that aspect, but also it can lead to you again taking advantage of like, well, you don't know what you're doing, you best do this, you best do that, you know what I mean? If you know something, show it. Like, don't be embarrassed to know something. Okay, the next one, be friendly to everyone, and that's just a life thing, isn't it? Obviously, but there are so many people in the school. Don't just isolate yourself to your mentor, your TA. If you're in a school with other student teachers, make friends with them. Obviously, like, even if they're not people you would be friends with in the real world, just be friendly. It doesn't hurt anyone. It makes your experience experience a lot nicer, you can have chats with people, but make the effort to like introduce yourself to other teachers, because you don't know as well when that would come in handy. I mean, that sounds really obvious, but you never know when you're going to need someone else's help. The next one is to constantly remind yourself, because you will have to, constantly remind yourself that this isn't your situation forever. Being a student teacher is not the job. Being a teacher is the job when you finally qualify, which will feel like forever once you're there, but it will go fast, and you've got to reassure yourself of that end goal, that you will get there. Because I've said this a million times and I'll say it again, student teaching does not prepare you for being a teacher. I haven't been a teacher yet, but I know there's like so many teachers in my life, and I would say in some respects it depends which school you're in, your mentor, all of this, and your uni's expectations. But the expectations on student teachers are so unrealistic. So if you're failing to meet those standards and you don't feel like you're doing amazing all the time, that's not how a teacher is in real life. So you've got to remember that you've just got to get through that period. And now I can be a teacher. Like, it's done now. I've got that. Even if I didn't want to use that, it's always there as a backup. You know, you've got the degree regardless. And leading on from that, be realistic. Oh my god, I am one of those people who, like, I'll be honest, in school, like, I didn't find revising that hard until I like got to like my A levels, I guess. But I did have an expectation for myself where it was like, you fail something, like, why? You've done something wrong. Whereas I would say every single student teacher has a completely different experience. So someone who is sat next to you in university might feel like they're doing amazing, but you're actually having a harder time than them, and you're like constantly comparing yourself. You're thinking, if you fail at one standard, you're like, oh, I'm an awful teacher. Whereas I would say you need to be realistic. You're not going to hit every single goal every single time. I personally feel like it's not possible, and if you feel like you're doing that, then maybe, you know, like, everyone has a different mentor, so everyone has a different school, everyone has a different experience. So this is a really difficult one to explain what I'm trying to say, but some people just have it easier and some people have it harder than others. And I would say I don't think there is a perfect teacher. Like, I don't think it can exist. There are so many expectations, you physically can't hit them all. So if you think you're a perfect teacher, you're probably not. I wouldn't say I am and I've qualified. Like, so even if you were comparing yourself to someone who's doing perfect, I wouldn't say they are either. So keep being realistic is my point. The next one, I think, is like, this stuck out to me because of my situation, but like pretty much like all of my family and friends are teachers or know a teacher. I'm very less lucky in that aspect. So for example, my boyfriend is doing a PGCE this year, but he's also done a teaching course before, and he's a TA.
My dad's a teacher, my stepmom was a teacher, my stepmother is a teacher, my boyfriend's mother was a TA, like, my friend is also doing courses with me and you.
I just got cut off on my most important point, so that's gonna bug me. But basically, communicate your situation, your feelings, your workload, your everything to do with student teaching if you don't have that many teachers in your life, and if you do, because it is a very unique situation to be in, and I wouldn't say it's one that I would have wanted to go through alone. People might just not understand your situation, so I do think communication is a must. So I'm aware that these top tips are more like a mental thing, I guess, but I do think the hardest challenge of being a student teacher is the mental aspect of it, from my perspective. I have already done a video that is solely based on actual physical preparations, like the essential actual physical objects that you need, so I feel like that covers that aspect. I am going to be doing another video on like my highlights and my, I don't know what the word is, not so highlights we're going to call it for now. I will make that video. If you have any questions, leave it below. If you are becoming a student teacher and you're about to go into placement, leave your year group below, because if I see a comment that's like a similar year group to mine, I'd love to help you out. I mean, I don't want to say I'm the best teacher in the world, but you know, I'd love to help you out and give you any ideas, tips, or anything like that. And if it's not my year group, then maybe you'll find someone else in the comments that's in the same year group as you, I hope. And if you are going on to placement, I wish you all the luck in the world. It will be over before you know it, it actually will, and a very big part of you will actually miss it, funnily enough. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. Bye!